some changes from the new Premier, I guess, putting his mark on what is this roadmap going forward. And all of these changes, for the most part, well, they're still restricted to fully vaccinated people. And so for that reason, they're kind of, they're variations on the roadmap that we've seen already laid out, with a couple of sort of significant changes in that indoor swimming pools can open next week, and at 80% there's a few more changes like mask rules in office buildings will drop. But the picture that we're looking at the moment is 587 cases today. This trend line continues to drop, and it'll be a bit easier to see on the 7-day average, which is down to 680 cases a day. Now, a week ago this was above 900, so it's pretty reasonable for us to think that by about this time next week, the 7-day average will be below 500, which is, we should say, significantly lower than a lot of the independent modelers who have been looking at this case curve suggested we might be at the time New South Wales is opening up. They were looking at models that were predicting in the high thousands or even higher numbers of cases, so we're significantly lower. That buys you a bit more breathing room to open up, and we're also below the hospitalisation peaks that the modelling from New South Wales Health predicted. But what we're expecting is we'll see this continue to drop for about another week. On Monday, the rules will ease. 4, maybe 5 days after that, we'll start to see if there's been an effect of that rule easing, of the fact that we're allowing more people to circulate in New South Wales. The virus has more opportunities to spread, only among fully vaccinated people, mind you, as long as the rules are largely being followed. So we'll start to see if there's an effect there, and if that effect is significant. It is not a fait accompli that cases will rise from next week, but it is a pretty reasonable expectation there'll be a little bit less downward pressure on that, and we'll start to then see as well as the weeks go on and we continue to see restrictions lift, which parcels will have the most impact. We're still watching hospitalisations dropping. Intensive care and ventilation numbers as well in New South Wales are starting to drop reliably now. So those numbers are all improving, and we're significantly, as I said, below the Burnet Institute modelling for New South Wales Health, the predictions for where that would be. So I think we start to see restrictions ease. We'll then learn a bit more about how important some of these rules that are in place at the moment are, and how much you can get away with. It's a pretty delicate dance here, right? Yeah. The National Cabinet plan still says, and the Doherty modelling and the Doherty Institute is still recommending strong suppression for quite some time still, while the vaccination rates continue to climb. So the delicate dance at the moment is, can you keep downward pressure on cases and therefore hospitalisations and deaths, while starting to ease off on some of the rules and regulations and restrictions that are really, curbing people's freedoms at the moment, the things that people can do and the ways people can live their lives. And can you keep those two in balance in such a way that you don't see a big escalation in cases in the next few weeks, certainly, while we wait for the vaccination rates to climb even higher than they currently are. So the first test of that comes next week. It's not a definite guarantee that these cases will spiral out of control or anything like that, but we'll watch very closely to see what happens, and the tweaks that have been announced today by the government. I mean, it's sort of curious in some ways, because there weren't a lot of people out there massively campaigning for bigger picnics and larger home visits in the next couple of weeks. So in some ways it's a bit curious about why they've done it, because if there are big spikes in cases next week, people will point back at this tweaking of rules as perhaps one of the causing factors. So in some ways it's curious, but in a lot of ways, it's a sort of slight expansion on what we've already seen announced and what the plan already was for next week. Yeah.
So in Victoria then, Casey, we've been watching for some signs of stability in hotspot areas. Are we seeing any sign of that yet?
Let's say maybe, Ros. It's a bit early to sort of say anything definitive. I'll take you through 3 pictures though. This is the case numbers that we're looking at, 1,638 more cases today. So the rate of growth does look like it's settled back down a bit. If you take out the step change, the extra jump in cases we saw last week, if you sort of ignore that big increase, the rate of change of this curve is not really it's not growing too much. And so that does bode well for a number of reasons. We're sort of waiting, where every expectation is this curve will bend because of the, impact of the long lockdown. We're now Victoria's now in, sorry, plus the effect of vaccines, especially in those hotspot areas. We're just waiting to see when that will actually happen. The 7-day average in Victoria, you can see, is sort of levelled out a little bit just today. It does look like it's maybe slowing down, but you know, we've seen it slow down a bit before and then speed up again because of other factors. But 1,400 cases a day, and what we're really watching is these areas here, Hume, and this is the reason I'm saying maybe we will see something fairly soon. 272 cases a day, but look, you know, it was growing relatively quickly. It's flattened out. It's actually dropped a little bit just on today's numbers. You know, cases have been flat in Hume for a couple of days now. That does point toward some real improvement in that area.